Hello and welcome back. Today I wanted to take you through a beginning to end post-processing tutorial on the shoot. This is Taurus from my Zodiac series, and I'm really pleased with how this one turned out, and I wanted to walk you through. There's a lot of pretty cool, fun things that I did in Photoshop to make this image that I think that a lot of people could learn from. And I wanted to show you guys how I walked through this image in my head. I'm going to try and recreate it as honestly as I can so you guys can see my process from beginning to end. So let's go ahead and chat a little bit about the concept behind how this image took shape. So my Zodiac series is all about, it's like a avant-garde fashion interpretation of the mythologies behind the various signs of the Zodiac. And Taurus is actually, the myth behind Taurus is about the Cretan bull, which was this gift that Poseidon gave to the people of Crete, who was this great massive bull who at first was just very friendly and was sort of the sacred cow of the island. But later it went berserk and started killing villagers. It started destroying farms and just causing massive damage across the island. And so I really wanted Taurus to be this sort of warrior woman. And as with all of these shoots, it was a real collaboration between everybody involved, from the model, who in this case is also the costume designer, to the hairstylist, and I brought in somebody else to make this wonderful bull's mask that you can see. So originally, I wanted the model to be wearing this bull mask, like this bull skull is actually part of her head. But when we actually got to the day of the shoot, we realized that the model is really too small to be wearing this as a mask. It just dwarfed her features, and it just really overpowered the scene in a way that I didn't really like. But I really liked it as an element, as a prop in the shoot. So we tried several different iterations. We tried her wearing it. We tried her holding it like a shield. But having it sort of laying next to her like a helmet that she's just taken off really worked best for me. It allowed it allowed the model and the hair and all the elements to shine beautifully, and I really loved the way that the light worked with the bull's mask, and it just felt better as a prop than as a mask. But my friend Kayla made this mask in just an incredible amount of time. I think she put it together in like 2 days, and it just looks magnificent. I couldn't be happier with how that turned out. The fashion designer slash model made these great hoof boots. She modified a pair of shoes that she had. They're high-heeled shoes, but they don't have a heel. They have like they're designed so that the structure is in place for there to not be a heel in them. And so she made these covers for them and added these fur pieces to go up the leg like a boot. And then she also made these wonderful arm pieces as well. And it was her that decided. She did some research and she discovered that green is the color of Taurus, and so she really liked this idea of of bringing in more femininity to the scene. So it's that mix of warrior and femininity. So we really liked this idea of having sort of flowers around the crotch. And the the hairstylist brought in this idea of a gigantic braid that sort of wraps around her. And I really loved that idea because it brought in the whole Minotaur of Crete concept. And the Minotaur is actually connected to the legend as well because the Cretan bull was the bull who also sired the Minotaur. And so I really loved that idea of incorporating mazes and folds into this whole design. So I really like that idea. So I wanted to step you through my post-processing from beginning to end. So let me show you my original image. This is my original image. I did crop it a little bit in Lightroom. So you can see this is the uncropped version. And then here's the cropped version. I generally don't go exploring other panels other than this basic panel. I do have a sharpening that happens on import. But really, I generally just stick with these sliders and don't really have much use for any of the others because I do so much of my work in Photoshop. I know that I'm going to be doing heavy retouching, and it's just easier for me to simplify the process and use Lightroom to sort of get the sort of overall tones, and then go to Photoshop for my colors and my for my colors and my if I wanted to add a vignette, I generally add it in Photoshop rather than in Lightroom. I hardly ever use any of these corrections up in here. Pretty much the only tool that I use outside of the basic panel is the crop tool. So as you can see, I've just boosted the shadows a little bit and dropped my vibrance just slightly. Let me show you the before on that. So the thing I like about the vibrant slider is that it works mostly on skin tones. So you can see as I drop my vibrance, it's pulling a little bit of the yellow out of the green down here in the flowers. But I mean, look what it does to the skin tones. It completely desaturates the skin tones. So, but I just wanted to drop it just a smidge, just so that those colors weren't quite as vibrant. And then I also boosted my shadows a little bit, just so I get a little bit more detail in this dark braid right in here. So let's jump over to Photoshop and I will show you what I do there. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop, and so I know right away there's some elements that definitely shouldn't be in there, like this light, and this little tiny corner of light stand down here, and then of course I need to complete the spear. I also need to bring in the bull's head. We started off just kind of working on her pose, and this was actually one of the images from earlier on in the shoot that I liked the best. I liked her pose. I liked how it showed off. I liked the position of her arm up in here. I like the angle of the spear. And I love how this sort of elbow comes out in a very sort of strong way. And I like the curve of her legs here and here. And I also like how her hoof is just slightly raised at the back. Like she's about ready to walk off and cause some more havoc. So there's some other things. You can see, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that that the panties have sort of pulled the skin in here, which sort of bunches it out a little bit here. And you can see a little bit over here, but it's mostly mostly hidden by her hand. And then if I scroll up, I do like to, in fashion shoots, I do like to slim the neck a little bit and just kind of caress the jawline in a little bit, just to make features a little bit more pointy. So I knew that I was going to be removing and smoothing some of these elements out. And then I'm also going to be removing the panties and removing the bra. So the bra was there to sort of corral this great big braid, and so the hairstylist pinned the braid to the bra, and so we'll be removing the bra, and you can see that that the hair of this braid that's woven into her actual hair is, it's just a mess. So I've got all these stray hairs that I need to remove. And when you come up to her real hair, her real hair looks great. There's some flyaways to deal with, but I've got a nice clean background to work with, so I'm not too worried about that. You can see there's some pinching of the skin where the bra comes around. But I'm going to use a technique called frequency separation to basically remove the panties and the bra, and you'll really see how the technique works really fantastic for around the bra line. I also have to complete the spear. So the spear is actually it's actually a flagpole, it's half of a flagpole. I do have the bottom half, but it's like 9 or 10 feet tall. So it would have completely dwarfed my model, and it was just way too long. So and I'm not that talented at finishing things. So I mean, I could have attached the other end of the spear and sort of sawed it off to the length I wanted, and then refinished the end, but that would have been a lot of work and wouldn't have worked as well. You'd have this sort of metal section right in here, and I'm not talented enough to find a stain that matches the stain here, and so I figured this is one of those areas where I'm happy to fix it in post, so to speak. I know that that's a bit of a a bit of a double word to use, or double phrase to use, but I think there are times when I'm definitely happy to do things in Photoshop, but I do really enjoy getting as much of the image right in camera and on set as possible. So like I love that I've got hairstylists and makeup artists who can create these wonderful things, and friends who can make amazing things like this bull skull. So I really want to get everything as perfect in camera and on set as I can, but I'm not afraid to combine elements in Photoshop if I need to, or create them if I need to. And I think that it's good to have flexibility in that area. So let's go ahead and get started. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to take care of all my liquefying that I need to do. So first things first, I'm going to make a duplicate layer by doing Command J. And that gives me an exact duplicate of my background layer. And the reason that I do this is so that I can always go back to my original image. And so I've got one completely unretouched, straight out of camera version of the file that's always there. So when I do my liquefying, I generally will make a selection with my marquee tool. And the reason I do that is because the liquefy tool is it's a really heavy, it's a really bulky tool, and so it can take a long time to render the entire image. and I'm only working on small parts of the image at a time. And so making a selection means that it only has to render the area that's selected. So a couple things about the Liquify tool is you really want your brush density and pressure to be really low. If I have these all the way up to 100%, let's make this brush a little bit bigger, and I'm using my square bracket keys to increase and decrease the brush size. But you can see that just like slight movements make a huge difference in the Liquify tool. So let's go ahead and reset. If you hold down Option, then this cancel changes to reset. Or you can come in here and grab your erase tool and just erase that back to where it was. So I like having my brush density down around 25% and my brush pressure around 15. I also like to have my brush size be a little bit bigger than the size that I'm working on, so I want to push this area in a smidge where it's been pushed out because of the panties. And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit tighter here, and I use Command plus and minus to zoom. And then you can see where the folds of the panties have sort of created these creases. And since we're essentially removing the panties completely, and so the nice thing about having your brush density and pressure this low is that you can make these sort of micro adjustments a little at a time. There we go. So I'm looking at this whole edge and I want it to be pretty smooth. I want it to look like, I want it to look nice and smooth, just like there was just skin there. So let's zoom back in. And we can do a before and after on that. So before and after. Okay, and let's go to the other side. Switch back to my marquee tool by pressing M. Make a new selection. And then I use the shortcut Command-Shift-X to enter Liquify. So we'll do the same thing to this side. We're just pushing in a little bit. And it doesn't have to be absolutely 100% perfect at this stage. It just has. We just want it to look as natural as possible. So there we go. That's the panties done. And then next we are going to move up here to the neck and chin line. We're going to select this area. Same thing, go into Liquify. We're going to just start sliding the hair over a little bit. I'm also going to just nudge the jawline just to smooth things out a little bit. And doing that also kind of messes up with this hanging jewelry that we've got here. So you just want to be careful that you also move that a little bit so that it doesn't look like it curves weirdly, because you still got gravity in the stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom out and do a quick before and after. Yeah, that's looking nice. Alright, so now let's go ahead and finish up the spear and remove some of these other distracting things. And I like to work on a new layer, so I'm going to go ahead and do Command Shift Option N to create a new blank layer. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab my clone stamp tool, make sure that I'm sampling from current and below. I'm just going to grab a nice big brush, just brush out this whole area. And then come down here, do the same thing with this light stand leg. Okay. Just because this looks a little bit strange, I'm going to go ahead and go in with my heel brush. Also make sure that my heel brush is on current and below. Okay, there's those things gotten rid of. Now let's drop down to the butt of the spear here. So again, I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool, and I'm going to move up the shaft a little bit. This guy. And now I'm looking at my preview, and I want to line up those edges as well as I can. There we go. Now, if things don't match, if the colors don't match perfectly right now, don't sweat too much about that. We can come in and fix that later. Let's see, this edge isn't quite right. So now to fix that weird discoloration, I grab my healing brush tool. I'm just going to go in there. And the healing brush tool sort of matches, sort of blends those areas together. So I'm going to switch back to my clone stamp. Because I'm on a separate layer, I'm going to be going over the boots a little bit, and we'll mask that out in a little bit. But for right now, we just want to get the spear going all the way down to her feet, and then we'll take care of any weird edges that it creates in a little bit. So we're going to go past where we want it to go. There we go. Now let's kind of back it off a little bit. pretty good. No really strong repeating patterns, but still go in there and create a little bit of randomness. Okay, as you can see, when it gets down here into this shadow, it sort of creates this weird glowing edge, and then it's picked up a little bit of the fur from over here on the boots. So we're going to go ahead and add a layer mask and get a nice small black brush. I'm just going to come up I'm on hard mix. Not sure how that happened. Let's go back to normal. There we go. Alright, so then let's just come down here and just paint out along that edge. So it really blends all these pieces together. And I took a little nick out of the spear there, so we'll switch back to white and change that back. This is why I like doing it in a layer mask rather than just adding or rather than just erasing it. I can always, if I make a mistake, and I can always fix it. Okay. So I went into the spear a little bit over there, but I actually want the spear to end right around here. So I'm going to go ahead and get my brush really small and just going to hand draw it. I want a little bit of a curve. And then let's get rid of all that down there. And then let's also see this edge. You can see where I cloned. I'm just going to round that off a little bit more. And then let's go back up this edge a little bit. So basically anywhere that you can tell that I did something, you want to go back and clean that up. Okay, so now we've got our spear set, but it looks totally strange because there's no shadow on the spear. So what I want to do is drop down and create a new layer right below that. and I want to change the blending mode on this to soft light. And then what I want to do is get my brush a little bit bigger, somewhere around in there, and go with the black, and I'm just going to drop my flow all the way down to 1%. And I'm just going to try and match my shadows that I've got here. So because I had my main light is to the right and in front of the subject, there's going to be a shadow going this way. And that's going to be the main shadow. But there's also a backlight, and so there's going to be a little bit of a shadow coming this way. So let's go ahead and just start drawing that in. Now because the shadow that I need it to cast is pretty much going to stay in this sort of general area, I don't need to sweat being exact too much. Okay, so that looks good for that. And then so that's probably pretty good. Let's go ahead and blur that a little bit just to make it disappear and blend in a little bit better. Okay, and then another thing that's going to happen is that the shoe here would be casting a shadow onto the spear. So let's go ahead and create a similar layer, soft light. But I want it to stay just on the spear, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clip it so that it just stays on the level below. So to do that, I hold down Command Option G. And so you can see that, let me show you. So if I bring my flow up to 100%, right, and paint in black, it only appears where there's information on the layer below. So, but obviously I don't want to do that. I want to drop my flow down to about 1% again. And then I'm just going to paint in just a little bit right around in here, just so it looks a little bit more natural. Yeah. So now let's go ahead and zoom out. And that looks like it's actually honestly there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add the bull skull. Now, to do that, I'm going to go back to Lightroom. This was the image that I used with the bull skull. So again, I do the same changes to this layer that I did to the other. And I'll just go ahead and open that up in Photoshop. All I want here is the bull skull. So let's go ahead and zoom into here. And then I just use the quick select tool. I just go in and just very roughly paint in what I'm looking for. Oh, too much. Now there's other ways to do this. I would probably use the pen tool if I were to I would use the pen tool, except for these areas in here get really crazy, and there's lots of little nodules and stuff. But I actually find that the quick select tool works wonderfully. Now, I wanted to show you this because I made a mistake when I was shooting this. As you can see, the the edge of my paper, I didn't tape it down all the way across, and so it actually covers the mask. But that's okay because the mask is going to be down at the very bottom of the frame anyway. So, but I wanted to show you that because, you know, yes, I do make mistakes. I'm only human. So that looks good. I'm going to make it so that that's not a background layer anymore, it's just a regular layer. And now I'm going to go into make a mask from this selection. Now that looks terrible, but give me a second. So now we go into our mask properties and we click on Mask Edge. And so here I like to turn my Smart Radius on and just kind of bump that up. Normally 1, 2, or 3, somewhere in that kind of neighborhood. And then I like to smooth it a little bit. Contrast is awfully important. I also like to feather it about half of a pixel. Right, that looks pretty good. Might even take my contrast up another notch or two. Yeah, that's looking better. And then go in here and grab your brush. So in these areas where it sort of gets fuzzy, you can come in here. Now it's tough because the fur is very, very similar in color to the fur around it. And actually I want to remove that. Actually I need to undo that. Delete the layer mask. So there we go, because I didn't want that. Okay, let's try that again. Layer mask, mask edge. Okay. Okay. That's pretty good. So now I'm going to crop this down to just the area that I need it. And I'm going to tell it to delete the crop pixels because I don't need them. And then I'm just going to drag this guy right in here. Except it clipped it as well. So Command Option G again will unclip it to that layer mask. And let's move this guy down to round about in there. That's where I like it. Okay. So now if I zoom in, you can see that this part looks a little bit strange. So I'm going to go in here and just, with brush, go into my mask and just paint in, just to kind of clean up that edge a little bit. I've still got a flow of 1%. I'm going to bump that up to 10 or so percent. Now I can drop that down, back down to 1. And I just want it to look natural. And I may even just mask it off a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And now we have the same problem with our mask. That we had with our spear, in that it's not casting a shadow. So let's go in. Same deal. Oops. Same deal. We will create a new layer underneath. Change the blend mode to screen. And let's go ahead and start making our shadow. Now, up here isn't really going to cast much of a shadow, because it's just too far away from the paper. You can see that anything more than a few inches away really stops casting a shadow very strongly. So I'm going to have a little bit of a shadow here. And then under here is going to be a pretty strong shadow. So let's bring our flow up. Oh, I see it's on screen. It should be on soft light. There we go. So yeah, we're going to have a pretty strong shadow under here. And again, this is going to be even more in shadow, because it's effectively being blocked by all of this. Okay, and then over here we're also going to cast a shadow. Actually, for this, I think multiply makes a better shadow, but it's way too heavy, so let's drop it. Let's drop it down. Okay, and then let's come in here and do another Gaussian blur. 5 I don't think is going to cut it this time, so let's bump it up even higher. Yeah, somewhere in that kind of neighborhood. Okay, and I think that this eye socket here, I don't really want to see that much. So I'm going to just come in here, create a new layer over it. I'm going to just darken that eye socket down. I'm also going to change that to multiply. And just come in here. There we go. All right. So now we've got our skull, our spear, and I've cleaned everything up. So I think I'm going to end it there for this first part. The second part, we're going to get into the really heavy skin retouching, which is going to involve a technique called frequency separation, and we're also going to use the frequency separation to remove the bra and the panties from the background of the hair and the flowers. So stay tuned next time, and I'll see you then.